A morning jog took a frightening turn for a Central Kentucky woman when police say a man attacked her. What we've learned about the investigation.
A man accused of killing 3 people in a Boyle County store testified today during a hearing about evidence in that case.
How Kentucky pharmacists are being trained to save lives as part of the fight to stop opioid overdoses in the state.
This is WKYT News at 6.
Good evening to you. Today, a man accused of killing 3 people in a Danville store took the stand as the judge heard arguments over evidence in the case.
The issue, a conversation investigators say that Kenneth Keith had with a pastor after the murders. His attorneys don't want it to be included as evidence. Police say in 2013, Kenneth Keith killed Michael and Angela Hawkinsmith and customer Daniel Smith in the Hawkinsmith's Danville store. Sean Moody has our top story at 6.
Tracy Harold is a pastor at a church in Michigan. He said he and Keith knew each other as their churches held functions together. On the stand, he recounted a conversation with Keith in the hours after Mike and Angela Hawkinsmith and Daniel Smith were shot and killed. He said Keith's tone changed when Harold said it sounded like the murders were a hit and that the Hawkinsmiths were innocent victims.
They ain't innocent. They cost me a lot of money.
So they seemed upset?
Very, yes, sir.
Harold said he talked to a detective in Danville about recording more calls between him and Keith. Those calls happened in October.
What was the purpose of that phone call?
Was to record the conversation of me talking to Alan and perhaps what he had told me that Friday night of when I called him initially, all the details that he told me, to perhaps see if he would say that again.
Keith's attorney argued that these conversations should be private, covered as privileged parishioner statements, because he says Harold was talking to Keith as a pastor, even though he wasn't technically in his congregation. Keith said he talked about feeling badly about how his business relationship with the Hawkinsmiths had ended.
That's the reason that I'm calling Pastor Harold to talk to him about it, to get these things off of my chest in a private manner. I'm calling at his invitation. I was speaking to him on a church phone in a church office. I believe these things to be private, and with the hopes that he would do as he had always done, give me some advice, give me some spiritual guidance.
Now, both Keith and the Commonwealth said there's nothing in those recordings that would amount to a confession. Keith says he doesn't have that burden to confess to. In Danville, Sean Moody, WKYT.
The judge did not make a ruling on the issue today. The next hearing in the case is February 2nd.
A woman out for a morning run ended up being attacked. Police in Clark County say she fought off a man who tried to sexually assault her. Now they need your help finding the attacker. The Clark County Sheriff's Office says the woman was running on Veterans Memorial Parkway Saturday morning when she was attacked. Hillary Thornton talked to investigators.
It is a newer stretch of roadway in Clark County.
You know, you got very, very wide shoulders. It's commercially pretty much undeveloped. There's a lot of walkers, a lot of runners that use that.
On Saturday morning, Sheriff Mural says one of those joggers who runs a stretch of Veterans Memorial Parkway regularly was attacked as a man attempted to sexually assault her.
She fought her attacker off, and he fled the scene. He was walking. We do know that. We don't know if he had a vehicle close by or not. That's some things that we're looking into.
Sheriff Perdue says thankfully the woman in her mid-30s got away with very minor injuries and was then able to give them a description of her attacker.
African-American male, probably mid-20s, short dreadlocks, had on a long sleeve shirt and a pair of sweatpants with a stripe down the sides of them.
The Clark County Sheriff says they always ask folks out walking and running to be aware and alert of their surroundings. Now as they investigate the sexual attack of a jogger here in town, they're asking that everyone be extra vigilant.
Try to have a partner or partners to walk, run with them. It just makes it safer, period. You know, it's the day and age that we live in now. If you must walk by yourself, then we discourage the use of headphones or anything that would take away your attention.
In Clark County, Hillary Thornton, WKYT.
People we talk to who live nearby say it's normally a quiet area, and they say this is the first time anything like this has happened there.
We now know the name of a woman who died in a fire at her Lexington home. Today, the coroner identified her as 63-year-old Patricia Washington. Investigators say she died of smoke inhalation and thermal burns. Washington lived in a duplex on Clays Mill Road, which caught fire about 8 last night. Her roommate escaped, but firefighters say they found Washington dead inside. So far, firefighters have not said what they think caused the fire. Today, Kentucky Senator Rand Paul made it official. He'll be running for president and re-election to the U.S. Senate next year.
Kentucky law won't allow candidates to appear twice on a ballot. So to get around that, the state's Republican Party will hold its first presidential caucus on March 5th. And Senator Paul will run for Senate during the primary in May.
People see my voice as a unique voice in the U.S. Senate, and they want my voice still to be heard nationally. And while I am an optimist, everybody knows there's 10, 15 other men and women running. And I think it's just it represents something pretty similar to what others have done.
Senator Paul is the only major GOP candidate running for president and his current Senate seat.
It's been another dreary day across Kentucky as far as the weather, and another round of rain is moving in. Chief Meteorologist Chris Bailey has an early look at that forecast. Chris?
Yeah, guys, a lot of dense fog and drizzle out there now, and I'm going to show you a sky cam here at the station that is absolutely pitch black. You're thinking, why on earth are you showing me this? Well, 15 minutes ago, we could see the traffic here on Winchester Road. Because of the fog now, we can't even see the headlights just in front of the station. That is how thick the fog is out there right now. Temperature in Lexington is at 50 degrees, but especially on the east side of town, the fog is ridiculous. So slow down and take it easy. In some cases, we're reduced to just a few feet. That's all you can see out in front of your car here on the east side of town. Here's what we're seeing on our Defender radar network. That's a lot of rain that is on the increase again. Not like we haven't had our fair share. Showers getting ready to push back into the metro here over the next 5-10 minutes or so. Heading toward Richmond, Berea, back toward Liberty, we're seeing rains that are beginning to pick up there. The heaviest stuff, though, from Bowling Green down toward the Nashville area, all of that is going to continue to work its way on into town as we go through the evening and overnight. Watch that future radar and boom. Watch it blow up with heavy rains as we go into late this evening through the wee hours of the morning and right on into that morning commute tomorrow. So to say it's going to get even wetter, it's kind of crazy to think about, but guys, it's going to get even wetter tonight. We'll come back and talk about that and maybe some flakes that follow that up in a few minutes.
Chris, thank you. As Kentucky health leaders try to reduce the number of opioid overdoses in the state, they're looking for new ways to fight the battle. So now the University of Kentucky is training pharmacists how to prevent overdose deaths while also teaching the public about why overdoses happen. Miranda Combs has this story new at 6.
If you sort of open your eyes and look at me and say, leave me alone, then that's over-medication, and we need to monitor because that over-medication can progress to overdose.
This class is a sign of the times.
This was basically birthed out of a recognition that there's a problem, especially with drug abuse, particularly in our state.
Brooke Hudspeth is a Lexington pharmacist. She's learning how to get a program and protocol in place to dispense naloxone, or Narcan, a drug meant to reverse an opioid addiction to anyone that asks for it.
The difference here is that we're able to dispense this medication without a direct prescription per se.
If we don't do our part as healthcare professionals to decrease deaths from opioid overdoses in Kentucky, who's going to? We're going to go through each of these.
So Trish Freeman and her team at the University of Kentucky's Pharmacy School have been holding trainings around the state for pharmacists to get certifications to then start dispensing naloxone without individual prescriptions. This authority comes from the passage of Senate Bill 192.
Pharmacists really, I think, that are interested in doing this recognize the role that they can play in this public health crisis. I mean, we have a public health crisis in Kentucky related to opioid overdose.
Freeman says making naloxone more accessible to patients will give them a chance at recovery.
Addiction is a chronic disease. And if you believe addiction is a chronic disease, then we have to understand that people with chronic disease relapse.
There's all kinds of factors that come into it.
Upstairs from this classroom is an associate dean working to pinpoint the addiction disease.
So the whole brain kind of acts in concert to drugs of abuse.
Linda Dwowskin can break down the brain's functions, but she says it's impossible to isolate the cause of drug addiction.
It's complicated. It's not really, I can't really give you a simple answer. Some people will take a drug once and become addicted, and other people don't.
She says a person's chance of becoming addicted to certain drugs has to do with certain factors and how the brain reacts. Genetic factors can play a role, as well as mental issues. Depression and anxiety can all heighten abuse potential.
Realizing the factors that are involved can help you to protect yourself from being exposed to drugs of abuse.
And this group is working to make sure they can give those struggling another chance.
I think it demonstrates the pharmacist's willingness to assume this responsibility and their recognition that they can play a huge role in decreasing overdose deaths, because if someone's dead, we can't get them into treatment.
In Lexington, Miranda Combs, WKYT.
Dwowskin is currently working to develop a medication to treat those addicted to meth. Right now, there's no available treatment for that particular drug.
The UK basketball team is back in Rupp Arena tonight. In about an hour, the top-ranked Cats will tip off the game against Illinois State. Rob Bromley joins us live from Rupp Arena with a preview. Rob?
Well, Sam, the Wildcats have this home game here tonight before heading out of the West Coast to play UCLA on Thursday. The #1 team in the country is going for its 7th straight win without a loss. Now, one thing that John Calipari has talked about over and over again is toughness. He has said all along he's concerned about it with his team, toughness around the basket. It will need to come in practice, and that can be a double-edged sword.
That's an issue. To be honest, it's going to be a process. Orlando and I talked about it, and he said, I know you well enough. The only way is they get comfortable with it. To get comfortable with it, you got to do it every day in practice. If you do it every day in practice, you're risking people getting hurt. So he knows me well enough. You're juggling balls.
Kentucky and Illinois State tipping off at 7 o'clock tonight. The game is on ESPN2. And again, as we told you in the last half hour, the Wildcats will be without Tyler Ulis. He has come out in street clothes, that elbow injury against South Florida back on Friday. Hopefully he'll be ready to go on Thursday when it's at UCLA. For now, that's it from here in Rupp. Back to you.
Rob, thank you. And the Cats received 59 of the 65 first-place votes in the new AP college basketball poll, which came out today. New tonight, the University of Kentucky has now covered up a mural that caused some controversy on campus.
This picture from UK shows a drape over the mural inside Memorial Hall, but UK leaders say this is temporary until they can find a better resolution. UK says the mural shows the history of Lexington, but some people were upset because it shows African-American people working in a tobacco field and playing music for white dancers.
Tonight, we have learned a longtime Lexington restaurant has shut its doors. Billy's Barbecue in the Chevy Chase neighborhood closed over the weekend. According to Business Lexington, the restaurant sold its location to Louisville-based Joella's Hot Chicken. No one on either side of the deal is talking right now, but 2 weeks ago, Joella's announced it was expanding to Lexington in what it called an iconic location.